How we doing, everybody? So my name is Ben. I'm with Team Platt, and I'm going to be teaching 10th grade chemistry, specifically high school chemistry, but it's usually taught in the 10th grade. So the standard that I'm going to be talking about today, and I'm going to be breaking down, is going to be standard physical high school HS physical science 1-1, meaning this is like the very beginning of everything that we're going to be learning in chemistry. It is using the periodic table as a model to predict the relative properties of elements based on the patterns of electrons in the outermost level or outermost energy level of atoms. So what that really boils down to is it's going to end up being using the periodic table kind of as our guide and as our tool and our reference in order to understand not only chemistry as a whole, but the individual components and elements that are going to build into compounds, which are going to be formed by different types of reactions. All those reactions are going to take place because of the electrons in the outermost level of energy of atoms. So each of these different elements has a different level of property or status, and they all build together differently into the periodic table. There is a pattern, a form, and a function to the table. So we're going to be breaking all of that down to get the building blocks and the foundational vocabulary, if you will, for how to build up into chemistry. So the assessment strategy that I'm going to be using, because it is high school, and because most of these students are going to be in multiple classes doing different varieties of things going on, is checking for understanding. Now, the reason I chose checking for understanding is, as I just mentioned, we're going to be going through the very beginning, standard 1-1. This is the very first thing these students are going to be learning, and first and foremost, they need to have the vocabulary down. When you go into science especially, it is a whole new language that you actually have to learn. And so having that vocabulary understood means that you have a grip and a basis by which you can expound on and expand into the rest of the themes, content, standards, etc. So the reason I chose checking for understanding throughout the unit is going to be because guiding them, helping them kind of use that vocabulary and helping them really get that basis. This will be done through question and answer, popcorn strategy, different guiding questions of predictions, so I can eventually work them up from the DOK level 1 and 2 into the 3 and 4. If you notice and you break down the actual word for word content standard, every one of the words there is going to be more of a level 1 application. However, it's meaning a level 3 or a level 4 analysis. We're going to talk about that in a little bit when we deconstruct that standard. So the formative assessment data is going to be from guided practice. It's going to be asking questions of the students throughout the lesson, and it's going to be guiding or scaffolding them as needed, and it's going to be prompting the use of scientific vocabulary. So, for example, when a student asks a question, I can say, here's the answer. I can use that vocabulary so that they hear it. When I ask them a question, such as, where is this element located on the periodic table? If they say, well, it's slightly underneath that indent over there, I can say, great, what column and what row is that in? Okay, now I can build them up into, all right, now what family is that part of? What period is that in? What larger group is that? That way they understand the form and the function as well as the vocabulary overall to build up on their standard lessons. And then kind of like I just mentioned, cueing those students to assess patterns and to look for that form and function. So deconstructing this standard, first things first, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about the different verbs, and all of these individual verbs, use, predict, and evaluate, are actually level 1 and level 2. But as I'm going to talk about with the DOK application, it's going to be applied in the level 4, at worst level 3 standard. So breaking it down, we're going to say the verb is going to be use, and the noun is going to be the periodic table. We're going to be using the periodic table and applying concepts. Like I said, I'm going to break down the individual lessons into the terms and into the vocabulary and into the basis of scaffolding them up so that they can apply those concepts. They can understand and they can interpret, they can critique, they can do what they need to do, but they have a strong foundational base. Then they're going to predict. So instead of just using recalling, they're going to predict. but they're not predicting just because of, oh, it's a pattern, we're going to figure it out. No, they're going to connect ideas. So what are they predicting? Well, the relative properties. These properties are not so cut and dry. They can be, meaning metals, nonmetals, and metalloids all behave in similar ways, but not every metal is going to be a solid at room temperature. Case in point, mercury. Not every nonmetal is going to behave the same way because they are located closer to the end of the periodic table. So we're going to connect the ideas using the vocabulary of family, periods, types, models, valence electrons. So we're going to be really expounding upon that, and we're going to be giving them the blueprint so that they can start drawing the picture of what they need. And then evaluating. Going into a higher level thinking is the evaluation process. And that's going to be the information and the validity of the information, because just repeating something, that's level 1. It doesn't really mean anything. So understanding the validity, which leads into the DOK of analyzing. They're looking at the patterns, they're figuring out why they're important, they're looking at the structure, and they're building up on it. So how does this apply to what I'm going to be doing as the teacher and what the students are going to be doing? Well, as the teacher, I'm going to be regularly asking questions of the students. I'm going to see what they've just learned. So there is an element of they're going to just be recalling information, but I'm going to build up on that. I'm going to say, okay, great. You told me what family or what row or what column, whatever term that they use, of course, appropriately scaffold. Why is that important? How can we understand the data for that? What does that mean for this particular element? And have them apply those concepts to the answer they just gave me. So that 1, they can teach themselves if they're incorrect, and 2, they can see, oh, wait, that doesn't make sense because of this, or it does make sense because of this. So they can take control of their own learning. They can really kind of teach themselves while they're being guided. And what is the student going to be doing? Well, the student is going to look for patterns, and they're going to critique how those properties they've learned apply to them. So while I am using the vocabulary and terminology, I'm going to be mirroring it to them, meaning, hey, I'm doing this. Okay, great. Now they're doing it. Awesome. Here's a pattern. Why is this pattern important? Here's a structure. Why is it important? The science standards for next-gen science standards, which are part of the Common Core, are all about incorporating engineering, modeling, and everything mathematical into science all together to really get that full STEM effect. So teaching the students how to model, not just that it is a model, and understanding the importance and the validity of that model. So the learning intention is overall to recognize the patterns, be able to connect them, and recognize the scientific vocabulary so that we can take that foundation, we can take that base, and we can start applying those concepts and connecting the ideas into later concepts that they learn, not just in my class, but when they move on into biology or when they move on into physics or anthropology, for example, understanding why those basic foundational pieces will bridge out into the overall bigger lesson. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know.